Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Fireside Chats with Dr. Mumba. I am excited today to host a wonderful colleague, Phil Agbeko, and I hope I said that right. Tell me how you actually say your last name.
You killed it, but it's Phil
Ah,
Agbeko. It's Phil Agbeko. The G is kind of silent.
it's
So
silent. See? So, yes, Phil Agbeko.
yeah,
And I'm excited that he and I met a couple of years ago. I can't actually believe that it's a couple of years ago in DC at a mutual friend's party. She was officially launching her foundation, and shout out to Numa Harrison. And so that's the power of networking. That's the power of collaboration. And Phil and I have been chatting about a lot of different things. And he and I are both very passionate about global health and creating global citizens. He has a wonderful CV. I'm going to try to do it justice. And today we're going to be talking about creating global citizens. And so, in terms of who Phil is, he is a dynamic visionary leader. He is a co founder and CEO of Hilltop Global Group. With his unwavering passion and innovative mindset, he has been instrumental in establishing Hilltop as a premier strategic advisory and education consulting firm, revolutionizing study abroad and internship programs with the focus on diverse landscapes of the African continent. Born and raised in Ghana and enriched by extensive experiences in Namibia, South Africa, and the USA, he is a global perspective. His global perspective is deeply rooted in his multicultural background. He is committed to increasing the visibility and accessibility of study abroad programs that illuminate Africa's unique experiential learning opportunities. Alongside fellow diaspora African classmate from Georgetown University, um, McDonald's School of Business, he has co founded Hilton Global Group, driven by the mission to shape the African narrative. The firm excels in facilitating transformative academic engagements and forging strategic partnerships that are cross continental on the African continent. Hilltop's innovative approach enhances um, mutual knowledge exchange between US and international universities and Africa's dynamic educational ecosystem. So, Phil, lovely to have you here today. I know we've been talking about this for months, and you and I have been planning on working together for a lot of different reasons, but mostly because we're both very passionate about global health and creating global citizens, and also shaping the African narrative. Because, as they say, until the story is told by the hunter will always be glorified. And so part of our mission here is to be able to shape those African narratives. And thank you for making time out of your busy schedule. I know you're all over the world every single time I'm talking to you. So welcome to our podcast.
wow. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I think I should let you do all my introductions going forward because one, this one was definitely very special. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I know that we all don't just become, we come from somewhere. And so tell us, who is Phil and how did you get to where you are? What makes who you are, what you're passionate about? We want to hear your story.
Sure, no, happy to share that, and also, welcoming the audience and thank them for taking their Saturday morning or afternoon to join us on this conversation, which is so
Mhm.
near and dear to both of us. So my journey actually starts in Ghana. I was born and raised in Ghana. Coincidentally, I'm in Ghana now, so I'm joining you from Accra, as you know.
Well,
Uh,
greetings to Accra.
yes, yes. So I am in the motherland. It
Mhm,
feels great. It's always good to be home.
mhm.
but growing up, I was always inspired by sort of the rich cultural heritage around me, and really the deep sense of community that really defines Ghana and most of Africa. So I always knew that I wanted to contribute to the growth of the continent in some way.
Mhm.
And funny, growing up, I always thought I wanted to be a diplomat. I just thought
Interesting.
I would be a diplomat, and I actually never officially did anything career and education wise to become a diplomat. But in all, for all intents and purposes, I am indeed a diplomat now. We can
Yes.
we can get into that in a little bit more detail.
Mhm.
So my early education and formative years were all in Ghana, high school, boarding school,
Mhm.
elementary, and all of those things. And then I had a very unique opportunity to go to Namibia to visit my dad, who was at the time seconded there by the government of Ghana. And
Mhm.
my intent was to really just pass through Ghana and hopefully land in the UK or the US somewhere, like most
Mhm.
young people at the time. But
Right.
I fell in love with Namibia so much so that I ended up staying there for 6 years. And
Interesting.
yes, and totally unplanned, I ended up doing my undergraduate in Namibia. My undergrad degree is actually from Namibia.
Okay.
And this was a very interesting time because this was just after independence from South Africa.
Mhm.
So
Mm.
you can imagine the dynamics, the racial dynamics, and all of the things that were sort of in transition at the time. Very,
Right.
very, very interesting for a young man coming from Ghana who had never been
Mhm.
exposed to any form of racism, for example.
Mm.
So
Exactly.
that's kind of the Namibia story. There's a lot to
Mhm.
unpack there, but I'll leave that alone for now. I also spent some time in South Africa while here. I got my first real job, really in the region with the World Bank,
Mhm.
which continued to fuel my passion for all things global.
Mm.
So I transitioned from there to DC with the intent of continuing in the World Bank. And
Right.
if life had taken the course that I predicted, I would probably be retiring from the World Bank now as some very, very high level executive. But
Mhm.
life usually throws us curveballs, and
Yes.
in my case, it took me along the path of just IT, information technology. So I worked in information
Mhm.
technology for years, really from engineering level, junior level, all the
Mhm.
way to senior engineering to project manager to program manager to then program director.
Wow.
And at the time that I said goodbye to the corporate world, I had about 350 direct reports, and
Wow.
and I was managing a program that was about 120 million dollars. But I say
Mm.
that in humility because in all that time, though it was exciting and challenging work, my heart was
Mhm.
still trying to do something on the continent. You know,
Exactly.
so that's a little bit of background, and so fast forward 10 years ago,
Mhm.
I needed a reset, and
Yeah.
so I enrolled as a full career professional. Enrolled in a MBA program at Georgetown University
Mhm.
in DC, which did my MBA there, and that's kind of what really laid the foundation for Hilltop and what it is today, and where
Mhm.
we're going. And you met my business partner, who's from Nigeria. He was my classmate, and
Yeah.
we have another partner who's from Kenya, and another partner who is American. And
Mhm.
so all of the blend of experiences that I've talked about, I've always looked at the world through a global lens. And
Mhm.
uh, full circle, I thought I was going to be a World Bank retiree now, but
Mhm.
now I am sort of a diplomat in my own right, doing
Right.
doing work with the African continent. And then one final pin I'll put in that is I don't know if you know, but I'm also a Fulbright, which was recently. I was fortunate to be accepted into the Fulbright program as a specialist in global education.
I'm
And
so excited for us to actually talk about that. It's one of the things I want us to touch on. So, yes.
so I'll leave it alone for now on the Fulbright experience. But as you can tell from everything I've said, even though
Mhm.
I've done many different things, my heart, my mind has always been on connecting with the continent
Exactly.
in a meaningful way, really in a meaningful way.
Mhm.
So I'll pause there. I'm sure you may have a follow up or want to give us.
Absolutely. So all of this is very exciting and it's a lot of transitions. You're born in Ghana, you moved to Namibia, you spent some time in Namibia. By the way, my brother lives in Namibia. So shout
Oh,
out
wow.
to my brother, Dr. Jesse Mumba. He lives in Namibia. So love going there to visit him and his family. Then transition to South Africa and you're growing in all of these professional endeavors and you're still having this hunger of still doing something meaningful for the African continent. Tell me, what was that process of realizing the dream in or really understanding that you had a dream inside of you that was slowly growing and you were trying to mature that into a full-blown business idea,
Mhm.
because sometimes how do you go from ideation to actualization? Because a lot of people talk about they started this thing but they're
Mhm.
thinking about it many years before and they really have to craft what that is going to look like before they actually implement it.
Yeah. So I don't know if you noticed a quick connection loss. Did you see that I was off for a quick second? Uh,
Yes.
so there's a power outage in Ghana.
Oh
So
my
thank,
goodness.
thank God for my technology experience. I quickly switched to my hotspot on my phone, and I'm back. But I think I may have missed the actual question. So throughout the cut. So if you can give me the question itself again, please.
Absolutely. I was asking you, I was like, so you're moving from Ghana to Namibia to South Africa to Washington, D.C. Throughout all of these experiences, you still have that innate feeling that you need to do something for the African continent. And even though you're rising in the ranks professionally in the corporate world, you still have this idea. So for a lot of people, they struggle to move from ideation to actualization. Help us understand what that process was like for you.
Yeah, thank you for that. So when we were in business school, our intent
Mhm,
um, all along was to do something back on the continent. So
mhm,
again, the two partners. So in the class of 55, I think on my two fingers I could count the number of Black students total. There were three
mhm.
Africans, and
Yeah.
the three of us were always talking about Africa. What are we going to do?
Mhm,
And classic MBA, we were thinking, oh, let's do a consulting firm and we'll do
mhm.
work with USAID and all of
Yeah.
these economic development things, which was interesting. But sometimes opportunities also present themselves, and you
Mhm.
have to, or even the universe may point you in a certain direction. So
Right.
with Hilltop, the idea was born in business school because
Mhm,
we had opportunities as a cohort to do study abroad on our own. So
mhm,
we traveled to different destinations. I
mhm.
went to Turkey. The whole group went to Turkey. We went to Hong Kong. Went to Vietnam, and groups
Yeah.
went in different places. But what we quickly realized through that experience was that not, and you know that as a professor
Mhm.
at the university, not many universities here focus on Africa.
Exactly.
And
Mhm.
so we started to research and we realized that less than 20% of the 6,000 or so universities in the US do their study abroad in Africa.
Wow.
There's a
Mm.
huge there's a huge European bias, and then
Absolutely.
next to Europe they go to Asia, and then
Mhm.
they'll go to Costa Rica and some of those other places. I think you know that firsthand very well.
I do. I
So
do.
and so really for us,
Mm,
we formed the business out of that gap that we saw. And
mm,
beyond trying to fill that gap, as diasporans living in the US, we're often confronted with the with the negative stereotypes about Africa. Because when you look at the
Mm-hmm.
media coverage, is usually almost always something negative. There's very
Yeah.
rarely any impactful positive stories. So we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be, like you said earlier about the story of the, the lion and the hunter. Wanted
Yes.
we wanted to be the ones telling the story. So the
Yeah.
idea came from Georgetown, and then our dean at the time, who was a strong advocate and still is, we
Mm-hmm.
presented the idea to him, and he said, "Sure, uh, let's do a pilot with a few students." And we did our first program
Mm-hmm.
was in Nairobi,
Yeah.
and that was in 2017, and we haven't looked back since. I mean, COVID
Mm-hmm.
kind of tried to slow us down, and we survived COVID. We're back and bigger and better and stronger, and we're
Mm-hmm.
grateful for that, and really, the two reasons we started Hilltop was the one being to fill that gap, which is so
Mm-hmm.
pervasive. There's not enough programs in Africa, and the
Yeah.
second reason is to change those perceptions, the
Mm-hmm.
negative perceptions, through the experiential learning programs. One of which I'm on now, and I can talk about that briefly later.
Yeah.
Uh, and our mission and our tagline is shaping the African narrative through experiential
Mm-hmm.
learning. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So you have this wonderful idea. Now you're on the African continent, actually doing education abroad yourself, and you're noticing all the different challenges and opportunities. How do you recognize the challenges that exist so that you can better prepare for what you're building, but also leverage the opportunities that are inherently African and uniquely African to craft these experiences for your audiences and your clients?
Absolutely. So, um, there are many opportunities. Some people
Mm-hmm.
like to look at them as problems, right? But I like
Yes,
to look at them as opportunities. And I try to impart that same sort of emotion or the feeling of, don't look at Africa as a basket case that needs help.
mm-hmm.
It's a place
Yeah,
where there's tremendous opportunities. But the other thing I also try to emphasize to them, and I have to remind myself also, is don't come in thinking you're about to save or rescue someone. Come in respectfully,
exactly.
and think of your engagement and interaction as something that would be mutually beneficial and as a
Mm-hmm.
bilateral kind of exchange. Sometimes I have to remind some of my guests,
Mm-hmm.
how to conduct themselves in meetings and so forth, because a certain arrogance comes out even
Mm-hmm.
in spite of pre-orientation conversations and so forth. And
Correct.
so I see myself and my company and my staff as, we're really uh, the gateway to Africa in global education. We're a small
Mm.
company, as you know, but
Yeah.
we definitely pack a punch. Yeah, and uh, try to and then our experience is authentic.
Mm-hmm.
We're all the leadership is all African, so we're
Mm-hmm.
not doing this as a hobby. We're not
Correct.
doing this as a, come to Africa and take a picture with a
Mm-hmm.
kid in an
Mm-hmm.
orphanage and go back and say you've been to Africa. We're looking to do, and we do, impactful
Mm-hmm.
experiences. We
Yes.
fo- we focus them by industry, by academic discipline and interests of
Mm-hmm.
the institution, and
Mm-hmm.
what types of educational outcomes they're looking for. And our expertise comes in
Mm-hmm.
filling in the local content, and
Right.
providing a turnkey experience end to end, as you're well
Mm-hmm.
aware of the things that we do. So that's how I like to look at, operating here is mutually beneficial
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, respectful, meaningful exchanges that
Yeah.
benefits both parties, and it's not one sided.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about tourism; it's way more than that. It's about transforming perspectives and
Mm-hmm.
really building enduring bridges between Africa and the global community.
Absolutely wonderful insights there. And so, one of the things that you and I have talked about for all these years that we've known each other is this whole concept of global citizenship. And sometimes it can be misunderstood, and sometimes it does have negative connotations for some people who think when somebody says they're a global citizen, that they're not appreciating the context or where exactly that they come from. What is your understanding or your personal definition of global citizenship, and why is it important in this day and age?
Wow, that's a heavy one. So I don't think there's any one right answer, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll give it my best to try and answer it. But certainly, it is a powerful concept,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to look at it through the lens of how interconnected we are as a world today. And
Right.
so I see it really at its core. Uh, to me, it means really recognizing that our identities and our
Mhm.
responsibilities they transcend our national borders, right?
Correct.
And
Mhm.
so, to me, global citizenship
Mhm.
should foster empathy and a sense of shared
Mhm.
responsibility uh,
Yes.
for the issues that impact all of us. From climate change to social
Mhm.
justice to economic inequality.
Mhm.
That's how because we are interconnected in such a way that um, it's hard to be removed from one thing that may be happening in one part of the world.
Mhm.
I think it should also remind us that we really may be shaped by our local communities, but our actions and our understanding
Mhm.
have a global impact. So
Exactly.
I may ask, or we may ask ourselves, why is it crucial? Why is it necessary
Mhm.
today? And
Mhm.
no need to spell out any specific examples, but look at how
Right.
polarized and complex our world is today. And
Correct.
so if we don't encourage people to understand cultural differences, perspectives,
Mhm.
and global issues, we really are risking, fostering a world that continues to be divided by misunderstandings and
Mhm.
frankly by missed opportunities. Because if you listen to the media and some of the
Mhm.
negative stereotypes, you'll never come to Africa. Um,
Exactly.
and so, to me, it should encourage collaboration and solution building
Mhm.
to face global challenges. I know that's a tall order, but
Right.
really, it should start from the mindset of really being flexible, being curious,
Mhm.
and be open. Be open to diversity. Quite frankly.
Absolutely. And I also think that this whole concept of global citizenship requires us to have a level of cultural humility that I think is so necessary in the world that we're living in today, because people come from all walks of life with all kinds of experiences. And just because you're not from that culture or you're not from that country and you're not from that perspective of view the world from the perspective that somebody brings doesn't mean that you cannot learn something from them. And I
Yeah.
like how you actually frame it where you say it's a missed opportunity. Most people don't look at it as a missed opportunity because they actually don't even understand the breadth of the knowledge and opportunities that they're missing out on for being close minded. And I often tell people that there's so many opportunities and things that have come my way because I've remained open to
Mhm.
learning from people from all walks of life, people from different backgrounds, people from different nationalities. And my worldview is so much richer, and I view the world in a completely different lens because I understand people's perspectives from different cultural context. And I may not necessarily agree with everything that they believe or they say, but there's a certain level of respect and humility that
Yeah.
comes from understanding where they're coming from.
Absolutely agree with that. Yes, definitely.
So you tell me you've always wanted to be a diplomat. Let's dive into that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, what's the question? Or is it you just want me to
You've
talk about the
always,
dream?
so tell me how this young man in Ghana always thought they wanted to be a diplomat, and what contextually at the time, what did it mean for you to be a diplomat? And now that you're actually doing this work, what are some of the differences that are there or similarities that you maybe envisioned as a young man?
Yeah, so my parents as kids, we did have opportunities to travel
Mm-hmm.
around the world quite a bit. Some of it was through my dad's work, and
Mm-hmm.
in fact, one of my siblings, through their travels, was born in Canada. And
Mm.
uh, back then, I used to say, why couldn't it have been me born in Canada or the U.S.? But anyway, and she might actually be on this call, also listening. But
Is that Yvette? I saw an Yvette joining us today.
it's not Yvette. That's also one of my siblings who was part of
Awesome.
my many
Well, shout
travels.
out Yvette. Very lovely to have you here.
Yeah, so she's in London at the moment, and again, global citizen. Families all over the place. But
Hmm.
but the I was always fascinated by just the sort of the swag that diplomats had. They show up
Hmm.
in Ghana at the time or wherever we were. It was a different license plate,
Hmm.
and the doors get open for them. They always get into play. I thought I was cool enough to at least enjoy it. At a minimum, that's what it was. I thought I was, you know,
Right.
I was sharp dressed enough. I was smart
Hmm.
enough, and I was, I could do. And sometimes, frankly, when I saw some of the diplomats, I said, no, I could definitely do this because this guy shouldn't be a diplomat. Uh, but interestingly, my uncle was an ambassador,
Hmm.
while we were in Namibia actually, and I just again the same swag. I actually talked to him at length about getting into the foreign service while I was there, and he started to give me the blueprint and the pathway. But that involved coming back to Ghana, joining the foreign
Hmm.
service, and working my way up. I mean, when you're
Hmm.
young and you're like trying to go, I
Yeah.
said, you know what, maybe not. So fast track to the US instead.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of how the story played out. But it's really, really interesting that, can I talk about the Fulbright now or
Yeah,
later?
that was going to be my next question
Yeah.
because I think they're interconnected.
Yeah. So fast forward, my math is fuzzy at this time, but let's say maybe 30 years later from when
Hmm.
this conversation was happening about joining the foreign service,
Hmm.
uh, I look at ways to enhance my professional portfolio. One option was to go do a PhD and be doctor, something like you, but that was just too much. So I started looking at fellowships and other things,
Right.
and a couple of people kept telling me you need to be a Fulbright. Like what you're
Yeah.
doing is like, and those that know Fulbright understand sort of the prestige of
Hmm.
Fulbright. It's a U.S. State Department backed
Hmm.
program, back with the embassies and all of that. So fast forward to my story, I applied to the program again. I had at least at one point 4 or 5 people kept telling me, and I just
Hmm.
buckled down once and I did the application.
Yeah.
It felt like going back to college because you have to write essays. Too much stuff for that.
And tell them why you're fit for the job. And
So I
by the way,
did.
we do have another Fulbright specialist here watching today. Shout out to Selena. Selena, thank you for joining us. Thank you
Oh,
for being
wonderful.
here.
So fast forward, I apply and I get accepted. I said, "Oh wow, this is cool." And then once you get accepted, that's not all of it because then you're on a roster and you either have to be matched to a project around the world, or you
Right.
need to be go find your own project, which
Mm-hmm.
is both pathways are quite onerous. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm sitting there one day and I get an email from the U.S. Embassy in Ghana, and they said because I had visited with students before, and the lady said, there's a university here that I think could be interested in the Fulbright program. Would you like to talk to them? That was
Wow.
it. I talked to them, and they kind of gave me a sense of their challenges. Again, talking
Mm-hmm.
about opportunities, and sitting where I'm sitting with all the resources, and I can see how you can bridge that gap, which is consistently what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing. I told them 100%. I would love to go on this journey with you. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we put together a project. They're the host company, host institution,
Mm-hmm.
and it took 6 months to get an approval from the U.S. government.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and so the approval came, and so next year, early next year, I will be on, I guess, sabbatical, working on my Fulbright. And
Well,
guess where it is?
congratulations.
It's going to be in Ghana. So I'm even more excited about that because I get to give back in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I got an email last week, and the email was from, I guess, the third party that manages the program, and you need to go to the U.S. Embassy for a security briefing when you arrive. I said, well, I'm a diplomat then. So,
There
so
you go. Now, that is so exciting, though, and congratulations. And for some of our audience members who don't know how big of a deal this is, I just want to really emphasize that this is such a huge deal. You have to really show yourself as really stellar in this field, in the field of global health and global studies and in all of these things. So I really, really want to congratulate you and just highlight how much of a an achievement that is. So
thank you.
thank you so much. So I want
Thank
to
you.
take you back to Namibia.
Yeah.
You said some interesting things happened while you're there. I'm interested to hear more about that.
Yes. One of the things that was most shocking to me was my exposure to racism for the very first time.
Mhm.
And my sister is on, and she was with me there, so she knows what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a young, confident, feisty young man, I just didn't take lightly to that. I would get in a
Mm-hmm.
scuffle, and I would speak back to people who tried to treat me differently. Like you will,
Exactly.
I'm talking 1992, right? So I'm dating
Mm-hmm.
myself, but 1992. This is right after independence from South Africa. So everybody
Mm-hmm.
was adjusting, and I'm just living as a young man who's never had to deal with this. So
Mm-hmm.
you walk in a store, they're treating you differently, they're following you around, and all of this nonsense. And I never stood for it. But one
Mm-hmm.
other good thing that came out of that is there was also a very strong uh, African contingent from different countries. So I have
Mm-hmm.
some people from Zambia, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, Congo, you name it. Somewhere there as
Mm-hmm.
refugees, somewhere there as students like me. And unfortunately, we, the non Namibian blacks,
Mm-hmm.
who all seem to be a bit more confident. So, like the
Mm-hmm.
local were a bit subdued because of what
Right.
they're just
They had
coming out.
experience,
And
right?
we
Like
were,
you're coming in with a whole different
yeah,
context and you haven't experienced um
exactly.
that racism in that
Yeah,
regard and in all of that. So you're coming in with a completely different context. So yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
So the good thing that came out of that is, unfortunately, we were all kind of like, I wouldn't say cast. We had Namibian friends, obviously, but
Mhm,
we were all kind of experiencing the same thing. So we grew
mhm.
very close as friends, and some of my best friends to this day are from Lusaka and from Kigali and from
Right.
Congo and you name it, and we're close to this day. So
Mhm.
something good did come out of that, and I actually Hilltop does run study abroad programs in Namibia.
Mm.
So again, I'm taking back. I was there in April this year with
Mhm.
a group. We're going back again next April, or my team will be going back in April. So again, going back to global citizenship, it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. The experiences that shape you can
Mhm.
continue to, contribute positively. But those two experiences were quite jarring.
Mhm.
Just a clear sense of being isolated and the
Mhm.
xenophobia that came with it, and then in there an opportunity to build sort of a
Mhm.
whole new ecosystem of friends.
Yeah.
It's been quite an experience that has stayed with me my whole life and will always
Mhm.
be part of the most formative years for me.
That is such a great insight. And I think that when you experience something like that, at least that's been my insight on this. When you experience something like that, there's something that is ignited in you that makes you want to do something about the situation, so that somebody who looks like you, talks like you, walks like you doesn't have to experience those same things that you experience. And I think that it gives you a certain level of resolve to find solutions to the world problems that you have faced individually, that allow you then to set a clear path for others to have better experiences. I don't know if that's something that's happened to you as well over the years.
Oh, absolutely. No, 100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so now talking about the World Bank, you're at the World Bank making strides, doing all of this great work as a young man. How do you make the decision to leave? Because there's definitely a dichotomy between following your passion, having some level of stability, and all of that stuff. How? Because this is something a lot of people actually gripe with. They want to be entrepreneurs. They want to do something that they're passionate about, but they're thinking about the security that a job provides, and all of these things. How do you make that decision? And how do you prepare for making that transition? Because I think there's a level of preparation that has to go into
Yeah.
that transition. It's not just like I wake up today and I'm going to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's a number of things. One was really just to stick with my original plan, which was,
Hmm.
I'm passing through Namibia to go to the U.S., to the U.K. So sticking with the original plan was the reason, and
Hmm.
really looking at more growth, right?
Hmm.
And also, I was kind of um, sidetracked by some of the negativity around just me being in that role.
Hmm.
A lot of people were not happy with that. Uh, but that's a story for when I see you in person. Uh, but that wasn't the overriding reason. The reason was sticking with
Hmm.
the original plan.
Right.
But then I was also slightly misguided because I was made to believe that I could really transition from there to World Bank in Washington D.C. very easily, and
Mm-hmm.
then that didn't happen. But that's
Hmm.
all good because better things happen along the way. So
Right.
it wasn't a random decision. It was
Hmm.
multiple things that kind of led me to that decision. Yeah.
Okay, so now Hilltop Global has been doing really great. You guys are definitely shaping the narrative on the African continent. You're doing a lot of great work, but I think that your vision is so much grander than where you currently are. So share with us your vision. Where do you see Hilltop Global in 5, 10 years, 15 years? What's the grandest vision you have for Hilltop Global?
Wow. So the grandest vision is to really one breaking the stereotypes, which is a bit
Hmm.
more. It's not as metrics driven. It's something
Hmm.
more of an emotional thing, which you can tell through experiences. But
Correct.
I guess maybe if we were to look at something that was more metrics driven, it would be to really shift that 20% to
Hmm.
something like 60%, you
Yeah.
know. And there is increased interest. We're a small company, so there's only so much we can do. So the vision then would be to, to have the kind of resources that will enable us to really scale in a big way,
Mhm.
but scaling without losing the authenticity of the business because at the
Yeah.
core, at the core, we still position ourselves as really probably the only Africans running as an organization
Mhm.
like this, like it's pure Africans that are
Mhm.
running programs in Africa on this
Mhm.
mission. So to scale, of course, leveraging technology to do more, uh,
Mhm.
and increase that proportion of programs that are coming this way. But
Mhm.
also, earlier I talked about bilateral, also find ways to do more from the continent side to the
That
U.S. and
was gonna be my next question.
to the U.S. from the U.S. because I talk bilateral and it wasn't just talk. I want to do it, but there are some constraints that
Hmm.
have been in our way. And I think you know about some of those. Really simply, for folks in global ed, they know that
Yeah.
visas for people coming to the
It's
U.S.
a
is
whole situation. Even when they're invited by a credible
yeah.
organization, it's a whole process.
Yeah, so the visas and the costs.
Yeah.
So really, the vision would be to be able to have some kind of see significant funding dedicated
Hmm.
to supporting students from here to come and also enjoy
Hmm.
the same experiences.
Hmm.
Because most of the students on this side have their programs underwritten by their institutions or by their
Correct.
parents.
Exactly. Hmm.
We already know you've been in Lusaka with students, so you know how many can really afford to do what we do,
Hmm.
right? So,
Exactly. Hmm.
so that's the vision.
Hmm.
Be that continue to be that bridge,
Hmm.
that matchmaker of matching opportunities
Hmm.
to resources, and actually real life example I'll give you is
Yeah.
why one of the reasons I'm here for many reasons, but one of the reasons I'm here is I'm with a
Hmm.
community college from Middle America, Iowa,
Hmm. Oh,
here,
wow.
and they want to expand their global education footprint, and
Mm.
so they have significant capacity and resources, and so
Yes.
we're looking at institutions that would match them up with
Hmm.
knowledge exchange, knowledge transfers, and there's just so much that has come out of this trip alone. In fact, if you go on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, I just saw that one of the my guests has posted on the
Hmm.
trip already, and so for me, being that matchmaker is key. But I'm
Hmm.
not just a matchmaker who will match and walk away. I'm gonna kind of be like the pastor, the marriage counselor who is
Yeah.
checking in on the marriage to make sure
Hmm.
folks are doing right.
Yeah.
I just don't want it to be some paper thing of a partnership. I want to see impact,
Exactly.
and
Hmm.
so I am part. By I mean Hilltop is part of that
Hmm.
process to
Hmm.
ensure that there's some continuity, there's some sustainability in
Correct.
whatever match that we make. Yeah.
And you talk about sustainability, and that's so important because in the world of global health and even when you think about community-based participatory research or community engaged research, there's such a disconnect when people just go in for one-time activities, and the local people and the people that they're working with feel like they're just another check mark on their checklist that they've done XYZ, but there's not any planning for continuity. And so, what kind of advice maybe do you have for people who are planning these global initiatives, global engagements, to really think about sustainability from the outset and not an afterthought?
Yeah. So I mean that is for me being a part of the process is personal. So
Mhm.
I try to first off understand what the requirements are of the institution that's
Mhm.
looking to come. And in those requirements, I want to see that there's some longevity,
Mhm.
right? And I don't want to see, well, if I see, fine. I would prefer to see something that is looking at having repeatable programs and not just a one-time check the box exercise. So
Exactly.
it will start from the requirements, and then from our side, we present opportunities that will allow you to have a long-term,
Mhm.
sustainable, sustainable engagement
Right.
uh, that's meaningful, that outlives any individuals, ideally. So if maybe University of Alabama is doing a
Mhm.
program and it's being run by you, uh,
Mhm.
and maybe you're no longer at University of Alabama, I would still like to see that program continue.
Continue. Exactly.
And
Mhm.
similarly, if we have partnerships here with
Mhm.
institutions, That's kind of how we approach it to make sure there's sustainability
Mhm.
beyond an individual. Because a lot of times,
Mhm.
as you know, these study abroad programs, especially in Africa, because most
Mhm.
universities won't go because they don't have an expert faculty who wants to go to Africa.
Exactly. Mhm.
And that immediately becomes a reason why they don't look at Africa.
And
Outside
there are
of
also a lot of misconceptions about the safety. Like nobody asks about safety when, their kid comes and says they're going to Europe or wherever. But like, parents will be calling you like, hey, how safe is my daughter going to be? And all of these questions.
yeah, so yeah, I'm not even gonna talk on that safety thing here because I don't know who's listening. But while I'm here with my guests, they have gotten some notifications saying there's chaos in Ghana, and this is why we're touring somewhere, driving around, having a good
Yeah.
laugh. And they're like, "Wait, what chaos am I hearing about?" There was a bit of a scuffle in Parliament a few days ago
Mm.
between the parties, and soon
Yeah.
after that, there were all of these posts coming from some places saying
Mm.
U.S. citizens and global citizens beware in Ghana, and I said, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And safety, and so the safety thing, I get that all the
Mhm.
time. Hilltop gets that all
Mhm.
the time, and one of the things that I always say, and that usually gets people quiet, is
Mhm.
we simply, our team will say to
Mhm.
the audience that they ask, am I going to be safe? I said,
Mhm.
well, you will never be shot by a random stranger.
Exactly.
That's why anywhere in Africa, right?
Yeah.
So and usually that ends the conversation. Uh,
Right.
yeah. Can I drink the water? Yes, you can drink the water. In some places, I might suggest you drink only bottled water for
Exactly. Mhm.
reasons of sanitation.
Exactly. Mhm.
But that safety thing is problematic. I mean,
Mhm.
I was in Nigeria earlier this year, and phenomenal place,
Mhm.
amazing opportunities, but most universities in the U.S. won't even touch Nigeria.
Right.
And like, nope, I'm not going to Nigeria because of
Mhm.
XYZ perception about I might get
Mhm.
kidnapped or this and that and that.
Yeah.
Those perceptions do so much damage. So
Mhm.
whenever we have an opportunity to travel with someone from an institution so they can see for themselves,
Mhm.
but then once they see for themselves and they're convinced, they have to go back and convince their risk team,
Exactly.
all of
Mhm.
those layers.
All of those layers. Exactly.
Most of the times, what
Mhm.
happens is we may secure business. Like
Mhm.
we just had a program in Nigeria. We did a site visit with the
Yeah.
faculty and all of that. They loved it. They came back, and it's not just the risk team, by the way. So,
Mhm.
and you know this as well. So they came back. Everything is done, locked
Mhm.
in, ready for next year. They come back just last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and I'm sorry we didn't get enough students to enroll.
Mhm.
So, what do you think the students are thinking? They're probably Googling and seeing things
Exactly. Yeah.
which aren't true.
Mhm.
And so we're facing the challenge from
Mhm.
faculty, administrators, and students about the negative perceptions. So it's a
Correct.
really tough sell in
Mhm.
general. Like we're trying to push our Africa programs, and like I'm a fearless advocate and tireless advocate of when
Mhm.
I'm at the conferences, I'm speaking and
Mhm.
engaging, and so yeah, those are some of the issues that we're up against.
Mhm. So, what do you say to someone who really wants to get involved in this field, doesn't know where to start? Um, where do they get started? How do they utilize the resources that are out there that they may not even be aware of, such as you? And how do they grow their global perspectives? Because it's so needed in this world that we're living in today.
Right. So you're talking global education, right? More or less.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So global education has to be local, and by
Mm-hmm.
that I mean I mean, you can't sit in Madrid or DC
Mhm.
and write a program on curriculum for global education and hope that it will be successful, right?
Mhm.
Or even if you're looking for a job and all of these things, you actually
Mhm.
have to show up. You have
Right.
to show up on the continent, have some skin in the game,
Mhm.
let all your senses be activated. When
Yeah.
you're in Africa, all of your senses get activated. Just the
Mhm.
vibrancy of the sound, the smells, and everything you're
Mhm.
hearing. And so I think it's important to show up and understand. First of all, try to get a deep understanding of the African continent. And one of the
Mhm.
biggest mistakes that a lot of people make is that Africa is a monolith, like this
Correct.
monolithic portrayal of Africa as one place.
Mhm.
That's where the
Mhm.
problems start because 54 countries, so much diversity.
Yeah.
Like you can't even from here and next door Nigeria. There's lots
Mhm.
of
This.
similarities, but also a lot of differences. So just one
Yeah.
thing, my Nigerian friends, Ghana jollof is definitely better. But
We're not that battle. I don't know if we're ever gonna settle that fight.
but but I'll give you credit because I'm representing one of your greatest icons today for you. So let's
There
leave the
you
fight.
go.
Let's leave the fight alone. But you have to show up and understand. Be authentic. I think the biggest thing is to be authentic. Don't be a fake saying I want to do things in Africa, but you're sitting
Mhm.
somewhere and just imagining that it will work out. So that would be my advice. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Phil. And I know we're winding down, we're coming to the top of the hour. But one of
Mhm.
the things I like to do in our podcast is it's easy to talk about the successes and the highlights of our careers. But a lot of us do face challenges along the way.
Mhm.
And most of our audience are young professionals who are still figuring out their professional career and all of those things and still growing in whether it's the corporate world, entrepreneur world, all of these different spheres of influence. Help us understand some of the challenges that you have had on your journey and how you've overcome.
Professionally or you talking
Professionally,
health?
personally, whatever you want to share with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, if I want to just isolate that to working in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
is just have a thick skin because
Mm-hmm.
one, you will get a lot of no's because again,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things are preempted by the negative stereotypes,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to have that thick skin. There's going to be a lot of churn and cycles where you're putting
Mm-hmm.
in good work and it doesn't go anywhere. But really
Right.
just stay true to the mission.
Mm-hmm.
The values and the vision should be like the anchor, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to stay grounded and resilient in
Yeah.
challenging times. They will be there for sure. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I would also suggest that one, I talked about being authentic earlier, and
Mm-hmm.
be authentic yourself, but also build authentic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because success is often about who you know,
Mm-hmm.
but more so about the quality of the relationships.
That's so true. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think definitely just seek mentors,
Mm-hmm.
allies, and people that believe in your vision, because
Mm-hmm.
at least that will get you closer to a yes than just wasting your time
Mm-hmm.
with people that will never be on the same page as you are.
Right.
That also takes a certain skill to know who's a real, waste of time. They might talk
Mm-hmm.
a good game and just really just waste your time.
Yeah.
But and then if you authentically really embrace
Mm-hmm.
cultural differences, if you're interested in
Yeah.
international work,
Mm-hmm.
um, what else? Be flexible. Like
Mm-hmm.
flexible, have an open mind. Don't be too rigid because
Yeah.
this is a very sort of even any career, for quite frankly, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's a dynamic workforce now. I mean,
Right.
look at what COVID taught us, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
remote work and work happening from anywhere in the world, right? Um,
Correct.
so if you're that rigid person who like, oh, I need to be in the office the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to be efficient if I'm working remotely or whatever it is, you have to be flexible.
Absolutely. Well, I know this has probably touched on some of your top 3 to 5 advice for
Yeah.
our audience, but in summary, if you were to prioritize 3 to 5 pieces of advice for our audience here today, what would you say those are?
Oh wow! I said some of that just now. So
Exactly. It's
one
okay
is
to repeat.
I'll repeat then. So one is I talked about staying true to your mission. So
Yeah.
definitely that will drive everything, and I will re-emphasize really building authentic relationships and being authentic yourself.
Hmm.
This one I didn't mention, but I will say that you have to cultivate curiosity, right?
Hmm.
Because curiosity is the foundation of growth.
Yes.
You know, ask a lot of questions, learn from others. You know, stay open to new ideas and
Hmm.
experiences. So what's that now? That's three, right? And
That's
then
3.
um, I talked about embracing cultural difference. I think the final thing I will say is just give back. You
Mhm.
know, leadership is not just about taking. Leadership is about serving
Mhm.
others and giving back. Um,
Yes.
so I think community engagement, social responsibility, and things that
Mhm.
make a positive impact. So that would be my top 3 to 5,
Mhm.
including the remix of the
The
ones I already told.
remix. Absolutely. I love this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I know we're at the top of the hour. I have absolutely enjoyed our conversations, and I'm looking back 4 or 5 years ago when we first met and you were telling me about Hilltop Global, and I'm so excited to see everything that you've done. The fact that we're even able to partner on several different things now is like just speaks to, like you were saying, the importance of building those connections that are authentic and learning from others. And so I thank you for your time. I know you're in Ghana right now and you made time to be with us today, so I appreciate it very, very much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next couple of days.
Yes.
And just continuing to see the growth that you guys experience and how you continue to shape that African narrative. It's definitely something that is a passion of mine, and I'm really grateful that you and your team are doing that. Any last words for us today?
First of all, thank you for having me on. I enjoyed the conversation as well, and I also like to congratulate you on the work that you're doing, your passion for the continent, and even having these conversations. So
Mhm.
kudos to you, and please keep doing what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, we're all storytellers. You're telling a story, I'm telling a story. Let's keep telling the story because, like you
Yeah.
said, if you don't, then the story gets told for you.
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
that would be my last word.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us again for this episode of Fireside Chats with Dr. Mumba. We were talking about creating global citizens, and my wonderful guest was Phil. And he is a Fulbright specialist, yo. He's not just like talking from without, he has a whole company that is dedicated to changing the African narrative, and he has all of this important work that he's doing. If you're ever in need of his services, please reach out to him. You can find him on LinkedIn, their website, and all kinds of other platforms. So, Phil, thank you so much for being here. We will see you next month on our next episode of Fireside Chats. I have a wonderful guest. I can't wait to reveal that to you guys in the next couple of weeks. But wherever you're watching us from, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.